Hi everybody, Adam Clery, ACFC, shirts being made as we speak. And if you're a Chelsea fan, I've got some enormous news for you. While I'm obviously not a mathematician, hence why I do something like this for a living, I can still read. So thank you very much for the 5 million-ish messages we've had about what's going wrong with Chelsea. Here is the video about what's going wrong with Chelsea. And that's the whole intro. Now before we start, it is 1,000,000 degrees in here, so if you can hear something in the background, that's the air conditioner, live with it. And if I go bright red in the face, that's just how it is. I thank you not to draw attention to it. Okay, so Chelsea FC, that's them. Here's some vital context before we start, because you do have fans of other clubs being like, hang on, they're like 2 points off the Champions League places, they've looked really good in parts this season, what on earth are fans whinging about? But then on the other side of all that, you've got the people who actually pay their money to go and watch Chelsea on the verge of storming the pitch and punching Robert Sanchez in the face every time he tries to take a short goal kick. So what's going on there then? Well, first off, they did look really good at one stage this season. Like if you went out on Boxing Day with all your pals and your little new Christmas socks on, by the time you got to the bar and ordered your first Baileys, right, they were second in the Premier League table. They were 3 points off top. Only Liverpool and Man City had been able to beat them. That's really good. They were exciting to watch. A number of last season's major underwhelmists appeared to be improving under the manager. There was tentative talk about a shock title challenge. However, by the time you'd ordered your 4th Baileys or something, they'd just been beaten 2-1 by Fulham, and the form has been incredibly patchy ever since then. And even on the old eye test, they've looked nowhere near the level they were in the initial parts of the season. Now, I will hold my hands up here and say that when this first started happening, and keep that in mind because there's a twist coming later on, when this first started happening, I was like, oh, it's pretty straightforward, all of this. They've lost Wesley Fofana, they've lost Romeo Lavia, they're really important to how they want to play, so no wonder the performances and the results haven't been as good. If you look at their availability and compare that with the run of results, the Venn diagram of being without them and not being as good is practically a circle, and the pair of them have started a grand total of 3 games since whenever it was they got injured. And it wasn't just that they had 2 players missing, because loads of teams in the Premier League have had injuries this season. It's the kind of players they were, and specifically what they were doing in this team. You look at their profiles, and these are from FBref this season, they are in the very top numbers in the Premier League for what they offer you physically. They both contribute absolutely massively to winning the ball back. Like Fofana is so aggressive with it, he's in the top 1% of Premier League defenders for tackles in the opposition third. They both read the game so well that they're 2 of the league's leading interceptors. And this was a graphical illustration I used at the time of Lavia and Fofana's combined defensive contribution in the 3-0 win against Aston Villa. And just take my word for it here, right? In a game where you have 65% possession, that is an enormous contribution from just 2 players. It pretty much absolves everybody else, in particular Enzo Fernandez and Levi Colwill, from having to worry about this stuff, and they can just be on the ball and excel on the ball, which is what those 2 players in particular are really good at. But, and here's the little twisty twist for you, we're a few months down the line from this, and while I absolutely stand by the fact that missing Lavia and missing Fofana really does mess with what it is Chelsea are trying to do, I actually don't think they're exclusively the reason for their spotty form. Like, the longer time has gone on, the longer it's looked like, in fact, it might actually be, dun dun dun, the manager. Not to sound like Colleen Rooney here, but it's ... Maresca ball. Because when you boil down what Maresca ball is supposed to be, it is a possession-heavy brand of football that by hook or by crook, you're supposed to end up with 5 players in the attack, then you get one of the defenders into the midfield and you shuffle into a back 3 like this. And the idea is you then push that right the way up the pitch as far as it will go and you pen in the opposition. So you play almost the entire game in their half with yourself set both in attack to exploit space and find passing lanes and probe and push and do all of this, but also for these 5 players to be well set to defend against counterattacks. That's what he wants to do. But the thing is, right, and I honestly sat down with a calculator, or the calculator app on my phone, and worked all this out, right? If we divide Chelsea's season into the good half and the bad half, there's a bit of a shocking revelation here. So the idea is that the better that Chelsea get at doing Maresca's brand of football, the more possession they will have, and then by extension, the more chances they'll create. But if you look at Chelsea's average amount of possession and average XG, and I know, like people don't care about XG, but it's just, instead of me going through shots on target and goals, it does sort of neatly bundle that up into how good the chances are. So just give me a pass on this one, right? If you look at their average possession and their XG, in the good part of the season, it's 56.5% of the ball and 2.13 XG per game. And I will say, both of those stats are really good. If you're creating on average 2 goals worth of chances and having slightly more of the ball, you're easily one of the best teams in the Premier League. It is no wonder they were second. But the thing is, after this, the possession jumps up massively to well over 60% per game. Woof. But then the XG drops like 25 or 30% to 1.5. Also, for very different reasons, woof. And if I'm Enzo Maresca looking at those numbers, I'd be really concerned by that, because the objective is to get this team more of the ball, and that's working. They're seeing more of the ball, but they're now creating less and worse chances as a result. Like, that's not how this is supposed to work. And that is weird, isn't it? It's almost like possession doesn't necessarily or automatically correlate with chance creation. And I just wonder if there's like a great recent example of this somewhere in English football, like, top of my head, I don't know, maybe Leicester City, like last season under Enzo Maresca? Leicester last season, just like Chelsea this season, had the second highest possession in the league at 61%, but if you rank all of their games by XG, so sort of like stack them by how good the chances they created were, 3 of their best 5 games came with less than 61% possession, so below their seasonal average with some of their best games. In fact, if you go through this and you look at when they played their best stuff, there is zero correlation whatsoever to them having more of the ball. In fact, their worst performances of the season, both in terms of chances created and results, came when they had their highest shares of possession. Like, it's actually nuts when you look at some of this, like 73 and 72% possession against QPR and Millwall, and then barely 1 goal's worth of XG created in both those games, which you then subsequently lose. Like, I knew it was going to be like that a bit when I started looking at the numbers, but I did not know it was going to be like that. But now, here's the thing, and I know exactly what you're thinking here, right? Let's see Chelsea's numbers. Now, as I just mentioned before, they're the second highest average possession this season, 58.4%, I think, off the top of my head. But when you look at their performances this season, there is again zero, nip, nada, niche correlation at all between them having the ball and them making chances. In fact, and if you're a Chelsea fan, this will absolutely spin your head clean off. That 4-2 against Brighton, their second best day in front of goal, is their lowest amount of possession they've had in the league all season. Madder still, their 4 highest percentages, the return fixture against Brighton, Everton, and both Ipswich games, they did not win a single one of those. So just to put this in one neat little sentence that you can tweet or stick in a WhatsApp group and take the credit for yourself, right? This is a manager who wants his team to see as much of the ball as possible, and yet is very good at creating chances without the ball, and really seems to struggle in games when the opposition just give them possession. So yeah, of course things don't seem to be working for Chelsea in the second half of the season, because there's no way that could possibly work. It's f***ing mad. And while this is all incredibly nerdy, deep maths, you don't even need that to be able to see this. Like, if you go back and watch some of their games from the early part of the season, you just lose count of the amount of really quick vertical goals they score, where they go back to front, they play into the space, where they rip teams apart with running and with pace and with through balls. Like, I can remember extremely vividly this goal they scored against Newcastle, because it's literally 1 or 2 touches, then they're completely in behind the defence. It is lightning. It is almost undefensible. It's really, really fun to watch. Although, admittedly not for me in that exact moment. But then you watch them in the Fulham game or the Ipswich game and just... where is that space? They have to hang crosses up all the time. They're shooting wildly because they've run out of ideas. And don't get me wrong, the fast breaks are still there, but it's now the opposition that are doing that to Chelsea. They have to commit so many bodies forward with this ponderous approach that you can now catch them out. But the thing is, and this is technically another little twist on all of this, right? This is where the issue starts to get a little bit clouded, right? Because while it is obvious that the manager wants them to have more of the ball, it is also absolutely true that these low blocks you see teams doing to Chelsea now were not as common in the early part of the season. Like, teams weren't as afraid of them as they seem to be at the minute, so they were being more open, and Chelsea were taking advantage of that. And the problem, of course, with low blocks is that the best way to open them up is by isolating players individually one-on-one and then beating them in those circumstances. And Chelsea have a wonderful squad packed with talented players, but nobody who's really good at that specific thing. Now, just to use the Ipswich game again, they get a goal from doing this exact thing. The block is low, they are deep, they're trying to deny them space, but they isolate a one-on-one, they beat that defender, and they get a goal from it. And that is great, but they have not been able to do that enough this season. Neto, Madueke, Palmer, all the players you want to be doing that have really low numbers for individual take-ons this season. As a result, Chelsea are third bottom in the league for the percentage take-on success they have. Like, they're not suited to be doing this, and teams are forcing them to play this way. So for me, the problems are twofold. You've got a manager who is obsessed with a particular style of play, does not want to move away from that as the general direction of travel, but you've got a squad who, when they try and play that way, the counter to it for other teams is pretty obvious and pretty effective. So either that will get better over time and he's right, or it'll get worse over time and he's wrong. And if you're a Chelsea fan, it's entirely up to you which side of that argument you're on. But what would, were I a Chelsea fan, give me a little bit of hope is that winning goal against Fulham, because it is just so not what they normally try to do. And with time running out, with points slipping away, they found a really good, incisive, vertical, lightning fast move up the pitch. And now, granted, they don't split Fulham wide open, but there's far more room in the final third for them to do something with it, and that gets them the goal. Now again, if you're a Chelsea fan, it's entirely up to you whether you think that's the players going, oh, do you know what, the hell with this passing rubbish, running up the other end and just getting a goal in spite of the manager, or whether it represents some, it's the word I want, malleability on his part, and he's gone, yeah, do you know what, that nerd stuff's not working, off you go, boys. Not being in the Chelsea dugout or dressing room that afternoon, I have no idea who gets the credit for that goal, but regardless, it did happen, and that's the important thing. So yeah, I normally try and end these with a question, and so the question here is fairly obvious. Like, Chelsea fans, are the frustrations you're feeling now merely just sort of the growing pains of what will be a long-term successful project? Like, so is this just going to click into life, a couple of more signings, it'll be amazing next season? Or is this just a guy who had some good early success and has no idea whatsoever how to capitalize on it or how to counter the counters to said success? Do you like him or do you not? That's what I'm asking. And also, just before we go, a reminder, I'm doing the Hackney Half in I've got to watch on a couple of weeks, around 5k this morning for it, so my legs really hurt, but it's worth it because I'm doing it for Calm, the campaign against living miserably. They're a suicide prevention charity here in the UK, a really awesome cause. If you do have a fiver or whatever, kicking around, burning a hole in your pocket, it goes so much further than you would believe, so it's a great place to donate. The link is in the description. I've just remembered I said that in the last video, and then I didn't put the link in the description, so I'll remember this time. You get me across all the social medias at Adam Clery, Clery, and of course I would implore you to subscribe to us here at ACFC, because I'd really like to hit 100k before the season ends. That would be like my trophy that I can win, and that would be nice for me and nice for you in a way. So do that. Clicky. Thank you. Goodbye. Bye.